He helped her daughter. What the Apache mother said next shocked the rancher. The sun had barely begun to climb above the jagged horizon, but already the desert was alive with heat. Sand and dust shimmered in the morning light, and the distant mountains seemed to glow with an amber hue. John Miller, a man in his mid-40s with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands, moved carefully along the worn path that led from his small ranch to the fence line he had promised himself he would fix that day. The fence ran along the edge of his property, separating his land from the wild desert beyond, where tumbleweeds rolled freely and coyotes sometimes wandered at night. John had lived on this land for most of his life. The ranch was modest, with a small house, a few barns, and a herd of horses he had cared for since his own daughter was small. It was a quiet life, one of solitude and steady work, and John liked it that way. As he approached the broken section of fence, he noticed a small figure struggling near the edge of the property. A young girl, no older than 10, was trying to carry a bundle of firewood that seemed much too heavy for her small frame. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose braid, and her clothes were simple, dusty, and worn but clean. John slowed his pace, watching her for a moment. Something about her determination reminded him of someone he had once known, someone he had lost. The girl stumbled over a rock, nearly dropping her load. Her small hands clutched the wood tightly, but it slipped from her grasp, scattering pieces across the sandy ground. John instinctively moved closer, raising his voice gently. "Hey there, need some help?" The girl froze, her eyes wide as they met his. For a brief moment she seemed unsure whether to run or accept his offer. Then slowly she nodded, and John stepped forward. "Here, let me carry that for you," he said, bending down and lifting the heavier pieces. His arms, strong from years of ranch work, easily managed the load. The girl watched him, her brow furrowed with curiosity and caution. John had seen children like her before, children of the local Apache community, but there was something in her eyes that set her apart. There was intelligence, bravery, and a quiet pride, even as she struggled with her burden. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't mention it," John replied, smiling. "What's your name?" "Isla," she said, her voice gaining confidence. "Nice to meet you, Isla. I'm John," he said, handing her the smaller pieces of wood. "You don't have to carry all of this by yourself." Isla hesitated, then allowed a small smile to form. "My mom asked me to get firewood," she admitted. "I didn't think it would be this heavy." John nodded, understanding. "Well, you did your best, and that counts for a lot." Together, they carried the wood a short distance toward a small clearing near the girl's home. John noticed a few footprints in the dust, likely made by her mother. A woman's presence was near, he thought, observing the way Isla glanced around nervously. John had lived among the local Apache families for years, trading goods and helping with small tasks, but he always respected their space and traditions. He knew better than to intrude without reason. As they worked, John asked gently, "Do you live nearby?" Isla nodded. "Just over there," she said, pointing to a small adobe-style home tucked against a cluster of rocks. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and John could see a woman moving about inside. Her posture was straight and strong, and though John didn't know her yet, he could sense her alertness, the kind of watchful energy that comes from protecting a child in a world that doesn't always make it easy for them. Once the firewood was stacked neatly, Isla wiped her hands on her dusty pants. "You didn't have to help me," she said. "Most people don't." John shrugged, smiling. "I've helped plenty of folks before. Sometimes it's just the right thing to do." He paused, then added, "Besides, you looked like you could use a hand." Isla looked down, then back up at him, studying his face. "Do you have kids?" she asked quietly. John felt a pang in his chest. He had a daughter once, years ago, before life had taken her away from him. He hadn't shared that story with anyone, and he wasn't sure he would with a child, but her question made him pause. "I did," he said softly. "A long time ago. She loved horses as much as you probably do." Isla's eyes widened slightly. "Horses?" she asked, a flicker of excitement breaking through her tired expression. John smiled, feeling a spark of connection. "Yes, horses can teach you patience, courage, and a little bit of respect for the land," he said. "Do you like horses?" Isla nodded eagerly. "I love them. I wish I could ride one every day." "You know," John said thoughtfully, "there are some horses here on the ranch. Not all of them are tame, but some would enjoy a gentle hand like yours." He hesitated, unsure how she would respond. "If you want, you can come by sometimes and see them, maybe even learn to ride." Isla's face lit up with a bright smile that seemed to chase away some of the dust and fatigue from her morning chores. "Really?" she asked. "You mean it?" "I do," John said. "But only if your mom says it's okay. I don't want to do anything without her knowing." Isla nodded, her excitement contained for a moment by respect for her mother's rules. "I'll ask her," she promised. As they spoke, a woman stepped out from behind the house. Her movements were quiet but deliberate, each step carrying a sense of authority and watchfulness. Her long dark hair was tied back, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied John closely. This was Marisol Redbird, Isla's mother, and she had been observing the entire encounter. Marisol's expression was unreadable, a mixture of caution and curiosity. She had seen many strangers in the area over the years, some kind, some dangerous, and her instincts told her to watch first, judge later. John noticed her presence but remained calm, raising a hand in greeting. "Good morning," he said politely. "I just helped your daughter with some firewood." Marisol's eyes softened slightly as she looked at Isla, then back at John. "Thank you," she said in a measured tone. "She tends to take on more than she should." John nodded, understanding. "She's a strong little girl." "Brave, too." Marisol studied him for a moment, noting the sincerity in his voice and the gentle way he had interacted with her daughter. There was no condescension, no selfish motive, just kindness. It was rare, and she recognized it. "I appreciate your help," she said finally. "I am Marisol. This is my daughter, Isla." John extended his hand respectfully. "John Miller," he said. "It's a pleasure to meet you both." The three stood there for a moment, the morning sun climbing higher, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. There was an unspoken understanding forming, fragile but present, a bridge between two lives that might otherwise never have crossed. Isla, sensing the approval in her mother's tone, took a deep breath. "Can I come to the ranch sometime?" she asked, her voice small but filled with hope. John glanced at Marisol, unsure how she would respond. The woman's eyes met his, searching, cautious but not unkind. Finally, she nodded. "Perhaps," she said. "We will see." For John, that single word felt like a door opening. He knew that trust had to be earned, that he could not rush it. But he also knew that small acts of kindness could have ripple effects far beyond a single morning. He looked down at Isla, who was smiling now, her earlier struggles forgotten in the warmth of the sun and the simple joy of human connection. He helped her pick up the last pieces of wood and carry them to the stack near her home, talking quietly with her along the way. They spoke of horses, of school, of dreams and fears. And though he was careful not to overstep, he felt a sense of purpose returning to his life, a feeling he had not experienced in years. As the morning wore on, John finally made his way back to his fence repair, leaving Isla and her mother behind, but carrying with him the quiet knowledge that sometimes the smallest gestures could change lives. He worked methodically, fixing the broken posts and stretching new wire carefully, yet his mind kept drifting back to the girl, and the woman who had welcomed his help, if only cautiously. The desert around him seemed brighter, more alive, as if it too had witnessed the quiet act of kindness. Birds called from the distant trees, and the wind whispered through the scrub. John felt a renewed connection not just to the land, but to the people who lived near it. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew that this was only the beginning of something unexpected, something meaningful that might grow with time and care. The days that followed were warm and dry, with the desert sun hanging high in the sky. John returned to his ranch chores, fixing fences, feeding horses, and repairing the barns, but his mind often wandered to Isla. He couldn't forget her small, determined face or the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about horses. There was something about her innocence and courage that reminded him of his own daughter, the one he had lost years ago. Isla, meanwhile, could not stop thinking about John. Helping her carry the firewood had seemed like a small thing, but it had felt different from the other encounters she'd had with strangers. There was no rush, no impatience, no judgment, only quiet care and understanding. She told her mother about John each evening as they sat around their small fireplace. "He's kind, Mama," Isla said one night, her eyes shining. "He didn't just help me with the firewood, he listened like he really cared." Marisol Redbird, sitting quietly in her chair, nodded slowly. She was cautious, as always, but she saw the spark in her daughter's eyes, the kind of spark that needed guidance, encouragement, and sometimes protection. She had grown up learning that the world could be harsh to children, especially to girls who wandered too far or spoke too freely. Kindness can be rare, Marisol said softly, her voice carrying a quiet wisdom. Sometimes it's best to be careful about who you trust. But I see that he means well. Isla nodded, eager to return to the ranch the next day. She had already begun imagining the horses she might see, the gentle giant animals she could touch and eventually ride. Sleep came slowly that night, with visions of rolling hills, the scent of hay, and the soft sounds of hooves echoing in her mind. The following morning, Isla woke early, eager to greet John at the ranch. She approached the path leading to his property cautiously, aware that her mother had reminded her to be careful. When she arrived, she found John feeding the horses, his hands coated in hay dust and dirt. He looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Isla," he said. "I didn't expect to see you so early." "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I wanted to see the horses," John chuckled softly. "Well, you're just in time. I have a few gentle ones that might like to meet a new friend." He stepped aside, allowing her to approach the corral. Isla's eyes widened as she took in the sight of the horses. There were three, each different in size and color, one a tall chestnut with a white blaze on its face, another a sleek black, and a smaller brown one that looked young but spirited. "These are our friends," John said, kneeling slightly so she could meet them eye to eye. "This is Thunder," he pointed to the chestnut. "Shadow," he said, gesturing to the black horse, "and this little one is Cinnamon. They're all gentle if you treat them kindly." Isla stepped forward slowly, her small hands reaching out to touch Thunder's soft muzzle. The horse nuzzled her gently, making her giggle. "He likes me," she exclaimed. John smiled, watching the joy on her face. "Horses can sense kindness," he explained. "They know when someone is gentle and patient. You just have to show them respect and they'll respect you back." For the next hour, John guided Isla as she learned how to approach the horses, stroke their coats, and speak softly so they would not be afraid. He demonstrated how to lead them carefully and praised her when she did it correctly. Isla absorbed every word, every motion, like a sponge soaking up water in the desert. She felt a sense of freedom she had never known, a connection to the animals that made her heart race with excitement and happiness. As the morning turned to noon, John suggested a short ride. Isla's eyes widened in surprise and delight. She had never ridden a horse before, and the thought of it made her both nervous and thrilled. John helped her mount Cinnamon, the smallest horse, whose calm and patient nature made him perfect for a beginner. He walked beside her, holding the reins until she felt steady and confident. "You're doing very well," he said, smiling. "Just keep your balance and follow my lead." Isla nodded, her grip firm but not tight. She felt Cinnamon move beneath her, the rhythm of his steps matching her heartbeat. The desert stretched endlessly around them, golden light glinting off rocks and sagebrush. For a few moments it felt as if the world had disappeared, leaving only her, the horse, and the quiet guidance of John by her side. After the ride, they returned to the corral. Isla's face was flushed with excitement, and her eyes sparkled with joy. "Thank you, John." "That was amazing," she said, her voice full of wonder. John smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, Isla. Horses have a way of teaching patience and courage, and I think you have both in plenty." Their time together became a daily routine over the following weeks. John continued teaching Isla about the horses, the land, and the small tasks required to care for the ranch. In return, she shared stories about her life, her school, and the traditions of her community. John listened carefully, never judging, always asking questions and showing genuine interest. Through these interactions, a quiet bond formed. It was a bond built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. John began to notice small changes in Isla. Her confidence grew, her laughter became more frequent, and her curiosity about the world expanded. He, too, felt changes within himself. The emptiness he had carried since losing his daughter seemed lighter when he saw Isla's spirit flourish under his guidance. One afternoon, while they were grooming the horses, Isla asked a question that made John pause. "Do you think I could ever ride like the grown-ups?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. John thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I do, but it will take practice, patience, and determination. You have all three, Isla. I've seen it in you already." Isla beamed, a mix of pride and excitement glowing on her face. She had never been told she could achieve something like this before. The feeling was empowering, and she felt a new sense of purpose stirring inside her. Even as their bond strengthened, Marisol remained cautious. She watched from a distance, ensuring that John's intentions were genuine and that Isla was safe. She noticed the respect he showed not only to her daughter, but also to the land and the animals. Slowly, she began to allow small moments of trust to grow, testing the boundaries carefully. One day, Marisol approached John while he was repairing a fence near the corral. "I see how you are with her," she said quietly. "You're patient and she seems to trust you." "That is rare." John paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "I only want to help her," he replied honestly. "I lost a daughter many years ago. I see a part of her in Isla, and I want to make sure she knows kindness and support exist in this world." Marisol studied him carefully. His sincerity was clear in his eyes and the way he spoke. She nodded slowly. "Then continue, but remember she is my daughter. Her safety and her heart come first." John smiled gently. "I understand completely." In the following weeks, the routine continued. Isla rode the horses more confidently, learned small chores, and shared laughter and stories with John. The desert, once a vast and lonely expanse, began to feel alive with possibility. The connection between the rancher and the girl became a quiet testament to trust and compassion, bridging the gap between two very different lives. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, John and Isla sat on a large rock, watching the horses graze in the fading light. Isla leaned against him, tired but happy. "I wish every day could be like this," she said softly. John nodded, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "Some days can be," he said. "As long as you remember what we learned here, patience, courage, and respect, you can carry this with you wherever you go." Isla smiled, her eyes reflecting the fiery glow of the sunset. "I will," she promised. As night fell over the desert, Marisol watched from her doorway, a quiet smile on her face. She saw her daughter happy, safe, and growing, and she felt a small but powerful sense of relief. Sometimes trust could be earned slowly, with gentle actions and consistent kindness. And in John Miller, she had found someone whose heart matched the sincerity of his deeds. In those quiet moments, the desert seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the beginning of a new chapter in all their lives. The bond that had started with a simple act of help had grown into something deeper, a connection between a child, her mother, and a man who understood the power of compassion and patience. It was a beginning, fragile but full of promise, and it would shape the days to come in ways none of them could yet imagine. The desert had grown hotter over the past few weeks, the sun beating down mercilessly on the ranch and the surrounding land. John Miller had settled into his routine of chores, caring for the horses and spending time with Isla. Their bond had deepened with every day spent together, but neither of them could have predicted what was about to happen. It was mid-morning when Isla suggested they explore a small creek a few miles from the ranch. John hesitated for a moment. He knew the area well and had visited the creek many times, but it was rocky and slippery in places. Still, he trusted Isla's curiosity and eagerness to learn. "All right," he said finally, "but we'll take it slow and you must listen to me carefully. One wrong step and it could be dangerous." Isla nodded eagerly, her dark eyes shining with excitement. "I'll be careful, John, I promise." The two of them set off together, walking along a winding path that led to the creek. The sound of water trickling over rocks grew louder as they approached, and the desert's harsh silence was replaced with the soft, soothing murmur of flowing water. Isla's excitement grew with each step. She pointed out wildflowers growing near the path and small lizards darting over sun-baked rocks. John smiled at her energy, reminded of how vibrant and curious children could be when given the chance to explore safely. When they finally reached the creek, John helped Isla step onto the rocks near the water's edge. The stones were smooth and wet, and the current ran faster than it seemed from a distance. Isla balanced carefully, eager to reach a larger rock further down the stream. "Come on, John, look at that big rock. I want to see what's on the other side." John took a careful look. The rock was farther out than he expected, and the water around it moved quickly. He raised his hand. "Hold on, Isla, that rock is slippery. You don't want to fall in." But Isla's determination got the better of her. She stepped carefully, then quickly, eager to reach the destination. For a moment, John thought she had it under control. Then her foot slipped on a slick stone. She yelped as she lost her balance and tumbled forward. John reacted instantly. He lunged toward her, but in the chaos, he could only grab the sleeve of her shirt. Isla fell partially into the creek, the cold water splashing around her legs. She cried out, fear flashing in her eyes. John's heart pounded in his chest as he steadied her, keeping a firm grip. "Got you," he shouted, pulling her onto a safer rock. Isla clung to him, trembling from shock and the sudden cold of the water. I'm okay," she stammered, her voice shaking. "I just slipped." John looked her over carefully. "You're okay, but you might have twisted your ankle. Let's not move too fast. We need to get you back to the ranch." He helped Isla balance as they slowly made their way back. Every step was cautious, and he supported her fully, making sure she didn't put weight on her injured leg. Isla's usual excitement was replaced with quiet trust as she leaned on him completely. John felt a protective instinct welling up inside him, a fierce desire to ensure she remained safe. By the time they reached the ranch, Isla was exhausted and in pain. John guided her inside and carefully helped her remove her shoes. Her ankle was swollen and bruised slightly, confirming his suspicion. He fetched a bowl of cool water and some clean cloths. Gently, he soaked a cloth and applied it to the injured ankle, speaking softly to reassure her. "It's going to be okay, Isla," he said. "We'll get it wrapped up and you'll rest. You'll be back on your feet soon." Isla's lips trembled and she fought back tears. "I didn't mean to get hurt, John. I wanted to see the rock," she whispered. John shook his head gently. "It's not your fault. Curiosity is a good thing. It's what makes you brave and smart. But we have to be careful. Even the smallest misstep can hurt us." Isla nodded quietly, leaning against him for comfort. She had never felt so scared and yet so safe at the same time. As John worked to wrap her ankle with a clean cloth and a soft bandage, he noticed a shadow at the doorway. Marisol Redbird had arrived, her expression a mixture of concern and quiet resolve. She had been nearby when the accident happened and had hurried over when she saw Isla's absence prolonged. "What happened?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. John looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "She slipped at the creek. It looks like a sprain, nothing broken." "I'm taking care of her." Marisol approached and knelt beside her daughter, inspecting the bandage John had applied. Isla leaned into her mother instinctively. Marisol's eyes softened slightly, but her gaze shifted to John. "Thank you for helping her," she said, her voice carrying a weight of trust and acknowledgement. "I know it wasn't easy and I know you did not cause this. You acted quickly and you kept her safe. That matters." John nodded respectfully. "I only did what anyone would do," he said quietly. "I couldn't just stand by." Marisol's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer. There was a pause, a quiet understanding that passed between them. For years, she had been protective of her daughter, wary of outsiders. But seeing John's actions, his calmness, his patience, his genuine concern, softened the caution in her heart. "You have a good heart, John Miller," she said finally, "and my daughter is lucky to have someone like you watching out for her." Isla looked up at her mother, then back at John, her eyes wide. "See, I told you he's nice," she said softly, her voice still trembling from the scare. John smiled, though his heart still raced from the adrenaline of the incident. "She's brave too," he said. "Curious and smart, just like her mother." Marisol's lips curved into a small smile. "Yes," she said quietly, "she is." The rest of the day passed slowly. John stayed close to Isla, helping her sit comfortably, fetching water and making sure she had something to eat. Even though the sun was high and the day was hot, he remained attentive, offering words of encouragement and light conversation. Isla's laughter returned slowly as the pain in her ankle eased with the cold compress and rest. During the quiet afternoon, Marisol and John spoke in private for a few moments. "I saw how you handled the situation," she said. "You didn't panic, you didn't act out of fear, you acted with care and you kept her safe. That's something rare." John nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I just wanted to make sure she was okay. I know how fast children can get hurt, and I know what it's like to feel helpless when someone you care about is in danger." Marisol studied him carefully, noting the honesty in his voice. "You care for her genuinely," she said slowly, "and I can see that. That matters more than words can say." Isla, hearing their quiet conversation, felt a warmth in her chest. She realized that John's presence in her life was more than just a teacher for horses. He was someone she could trust, someone who would be there when she needed him, even when mistakes happened. Over the next few days, John continued to care for Isla, adjusting her daily activities so that she could rest her ankle properly. He showed her simple exercises to strengthen it gently and encouraged her to talk about her feelings and experiences. Isla listened attentively, soaking up his advice like a sponge. Marisol observed this quietly. She was beginning to see that John's influence on her daughter was positive. He was teaching her more than just writing skills. He was teaching her patience, resilience, and the quiet power of trust. The bond between John and Isla had been tested in a moment of fear, and it had proven strong. One evening, as the sun set in the west, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, John and Isla sat on a bench outside the ranch house. Isla's ankle was healing well, and she could move with only a slight limp. She leaned against John's shoulder, exhausted but content. "Thank you for taking care of me, John," she said softly. "I was scared, but you made me feel safe." John smiled, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're very brave, Isla, remember that. Even when things seem scary, you can face them with courage." Isla nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She knew that mistakes could happen, that accidents could occur, but she also knew that someone could be there to help her, to guide her, and to keep her safe. That realization gave her a sense of confidence she had never felt before. As night fell over the desert, the ranch grew quiet. Horses grazed peacefully, the wind rustled through the trees, and the stars appeared one by one in the clear sky. John looked out at the horizon, reflecting on the events of the past days. He knew that life was unpredictable, full of challenges and surprises. But he also knew that small acts of care, trust, and kindness could create bonds that lasted far longer than any one moment. And in that quiet desert night, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper connection to Isla, and a respect for the mother who had entrusted her daughter to his guidance, even if only cautiously. The turning point had come, testing trust, courage, and care, and all three had proven stronger than anyone could have imagined. Days passed, and the desert began to shift from the harsh heat of summer to the slightly cooler, more forgiving days of early fall. Isla's ankle had healed, though she still moved carefully over rocky terrain. The accident at the creek had been a scare, but it had also marked a turning point for all of them. The trust that had been building slowly between John and the Redbird family now felt solid, like the strong posts of the fences John had spent his life fixing. One morning, Isla bounded out of her home before the sun had fully risen, her small backpack bouncing on her shoulders. She had been waiting for this day. John had promised her a longer ride on one of the ranch horses, and she could hardly contain her excitement. Her dark eyes sparkled as she approached the corral where John was already preparing the horses. "Good morning, Isla," John greeted, smiling as he checked the bridles and saddles. "Are you ready for your ride?" Isla nodded eagerly. "I've been waiting all week," John chuckled. "All right then, today we'll try something new. We'll ride around the pasture and see some of the hills. Remember, balance and patience are key. The horses will respond to your calmness and confidence." Isla's eyes widened with anticipation. She had grown in confidence over the past few weeks. Learning to care for the horses, understanding the land, and spending time with John had changed her in ways she could feel, but had not fully understood. She nodded seriously, gripping the reins and adjusting her posture as John helped her mount Cinnamon, the gentle brown horse that had been her companion from the start. John followed closely, guiding her along a path that wound through the tall grass and rocks of the pasture. The horses moved steadily, their hooves stirring up small clouds of dust as they trotted along. Isla's laughter rang out bright and joyful as she leaned forward, feeling the rhythm of Cinnamon's steps. "You're doing very well, Isla," John said. "Remember to keep your back straight and your hands steady. You're guiding the horse, but also trusting him to follow you." Isla nodded, concentrating, but the thrill of moving over the open land filled her with energy. She felt a sense of freedom she had never known, a feeling that she could explore, learn, and grow with confidence. For John, watching her ride was like seeing a flower bloom in the desert, fragile yet strong, beautiful yet resilient. As they reached a small hill overlooking the ranch, John stopped and helped Isla dismount. They sat on a large rock, the desert stretched out before them, the wind carrying the scent of sagebrush and earth. "This view is amazing," Isla said, her voice soft with awe. John smiled. "It's easy to forget how beautiful this land can be until you stop and really look. Life, like the land, has its ups and downs, but it's important to appreciate the moments in between." Isla nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the lesson without fully understanding it. She knew only that she felt safe, happy, and confident with John by her side. Later that afternoon, Marisol approached the ranch, having decided to spend more time observing her daughter's new experiences. She had grown to trust John over the weeks, seeing firsthand how he treated Isla with care, respect, and patience. She had also noticed the positive changes in Isla, her confidence, her courage, and her growing joy in exploring the world. "John," Marisol said, her voice calm but warm, "I wanted to thank you again for everything. You've done more than help her ride a horse or carry firewood. You've shown her patience, understanding, and kindness. Those are lessons that matter more than anything else." John looked at her humbled. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said softly. "I wanted to make sure she knew she's capable and that she can trust someone when they show care. Your daughter is remarkable, Marisol. She's smart, brave, and full of life." Marisol studied him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. For years, she had protected Isla carefully, cautious about outsiders and the world beyond their community. But John had shown her that trust could be earned through actions, not just words. "You've earned our trust," she said finally, "and I'm grateful for that." Isla, overhearing their conversation, smiled brightly. She felt a warmth in her chest. Not only had she grown in confidence, but she also realized that the bond between her mother and John was strong and respectful. She was no longer a child timid in the world. She was becoming someone who could navigate it with guidance, care, and courage. Over the next few weeks, John continued to guide Isla, gradually teaching her to ride longer distances, care for the horses more independently, and even manage small chores around the ranch. He explained the routines of feeding, grooming, and tending to the animals, always patient, always encouraging. Isla's skills grew quickly, her confidence evident in every movement. One afternoon, as they worked together near the barn, a small incident reminded them of how far they had come. Cinnamon, sensing something in the wind, spooked slightly and reared up. Isla held her ground, remembering John's lessons about calmness and control. With gentle guidance, she calmed Cinnamon, speaking softly and moving with care. John watched, impressed. "You did that perfectly," he said, smiling broadly. "See what happens when you stay calm and trust yourself? The horse trusts you too." Isla beamed, proud of her accomplishment. "I did it," she exclaimed, her laughter filling the air. "I really did it," John nodded. "Yes, you did, and that's how you grow, not by avoiding challenges, but by facing them with patience and courage." As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange, Marisol approached again. She had been watching from a distance, seeing the progress and growth in her daughter. "You've done well, Isla," she said gently. "And John, I see how much care you put into teaching her. It means more than you know." John smiled humbly. "It's a joy to see her learn. She's a quick learner and has a heart full of courage." Marisol nodded, feeling a sense of peace. She had watched her daughter grow, overcome fear, and gain confidence. She had also witnessed the development of trust between John and Isla, a bond that would remain long after these days. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between John, Isla, and Marisol deepened. They spent time together, not just riding horses or tending the ranch, but sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments. John learned about the Redbird family's traditions, their respect for the land, and their connection to the desert. Marisol saw in John a man who respected their ways, listened carefully, and valued her daughter's well-being above all else. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, John, Isla, and Marisol sat together on a small hill overlooking the ranch. The horses grazed peacefully in the distance, and the wind carried the soft scent of sage and desert flowers. "I can't believe how much I've learned," Isla said softly, leaning against John's shoulder. "I feel like I can do anything now." John smiled, placing a gentle hand on her back. "You've always had it in you," he said. "I only helped you see it." Marisol looked at her daughter, then at John, and finally spoke. "You've shown us both something important," she said. "That trust, kindness, and patience can create bonds that last. You become part of our lives, John, in a way that matters more than words can express." John felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of fulfillment he had not experienced in years. "Thank you," he said softly. "I never expected to find this kind of connection, but I'm grateful for it every day." Isla smiled, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. She felt a sense of safety, belonging, and joy that she had never known before. She knew that life would have challenges ahead, but she also knew that with courage, patience, and the support of people who cared for her, she could face them all. As night fell over the desert, stars began to twinkle in the clear sky. The ranch, once just a place of work, had become a home filled with laughter, learning, and trust. The bonds that had formed between John, Isla, and Marisol were strong and enduring, built on shared experiences, care, and the quiet power of kindness. In the weeks and months that followed, John continued to mentor Isla, helping her grow in confidence, skill, and character. The Redbird family and John became a close-knit unit, connected not by blood, but by trust, respect, and shared experiences. The desert around them, vast and timeless, seemed to reflect the strength and beauty of these bonds. And in that quiet desert landscape, under the wide sky and among the rolling hills, a story of compassion, trust, and courage reached its gentle conclusion. What had begun with a simple act of helping carry firewood had blossomed into a connection that would last a lifetime. Proof that small gestures, sincere hearts, and patient guidance could change lives in ways no one could have imagined. Isla rode her horse freely across the pasture, John walking beside her with a smile, and Marisol watching proudly from the doorway. The sun set behind the distant hills, casting a golden glow over the land, the horses, and the people whose lives had been forever touched by trust, courage, and kindness. The ranch, the desert, and the hearts of those who lived there had all changed. And in that change they had found something rare and beautiful, a family forged not by circumstance, but by care, understanding, and love.